I know we've just finished a 6,200 mile epic adventure right into the Arctic in the very northern tip of Norway. Scandinavia was firmly in the grip of winter still because we started this trip in March. So we ended up driving in minus 23 degrees C and spent over 1,000 miles driving on solid ice roads and compacted snow.
Before we started, we had to make a number of modifications to the van. So this video is about whether they all worked out. If you haven't seen our Arctic adventure videos, then please check them out. There's a link below, or just go to our channel to check them out. We're Sarah and Ben. Welcome back to Diamonds on Tour. Ben?
Now, under here.
Where have you gone?
Come down here. Let's start under here.
What are you doing?
Okay then, welcome to the underneath of our van. The first thing we'll talk about is the insulation and heating that we put on the waste tanks and waste pipes which are underneath the van here. We use this 12mm Armorflex and put electric heating cables on all these pipes and electric heating pads underneath the grey water tank which is here. We found that we used them when it was down to about minus 9 degrees C up in the Arctic, and that kept this system completely free, no problem at all. But actually below minus 9 the tank actually froze. The pipes were still fine, but the tank froze. So for a couple of weeks while we were at that really extreme northern latitude, we just had to use a bucket of water in the sink and empty it into a drain for doing our washing up. So it was very effective, but not in the really extreme temperatures. A couple of things with it. We found that it does draw quite a lot of electricity, so bear that in mind. You're going to need to have a decent battery pack, but more importantly a really good way of recharging your batteries once you've run them down a bit. The other thing was that the pipe here, you see here, it's actually got a little bit burnt. It's just the heat from the exhaust, which is right here, has just damaged the tape. So I need to do a bit of a repair on here, and I'll use some aluminium sheet around it to provide a heat shield, a bit like I did here on the side of the grey water tank. I thought that this distance from the exhaust would be enough, but it wasn't. And one more point on the electrics. I found that the fuse that protects this system, the plastic coating of it actually melted. The fuse didn't blow, but the plastic melted. So I think that's another example of buy cheap, buy twice. So I'll be replacing all of the fuses which are the same type, because obviously that's not a good thing. Another thing while I'm under here was the hydronic heater, which is this here. And that was what we fitted to serve several functions really. These pipes are the hoses that are connected to the engine's cooling system and take hot water from the engine down to the back of the van to heat our hot water tank. It's a calorifier. So what I've done was augmented that system with an additional hydronic diesel heater in that line. So when we turn that on, it preheats this water. It circulates hot water through here to heat our engine at that end, so we can preheat the engine, and we can also heat our water. But it also goes through a heater in the garage area, which we use to heat the batteries to keep those warm, and also ducted some warm air to our bathroom, so we could use that as a drying area and provide some additional heating for the van. This worked absolutely fantastically. It was an absolute essential, I would say, for travelling up into the Arctic. Being able to preheat your engine is extremely important, because a very cold engine, the metal shrinks and you get much tighter tolerances throughout the engine, you know, the pistons in the bores. And if you try and start an engine in very cold conditions, you can create an awful lot of additional engine wear, which causes more emissions, damages your engine, and you're going to really reduce the life you get out of your engine. So using this, turn it on about 20 minutes before starting the engine in the morning, and the engine was up to temperature when we needed to start it, and absolutely perfect. Really good. And as I say, I think an essential if you're going to be travelling up into those extremes. Now this is where those two hot water pipes from the engine's cooling system enter the garage area of the van. It goes up through here, which is the additional heater for this garage area, and then also through here, which is the calorifier to heat our hot water. So from this heater, this hot air is then ducted down here to keep the batteries warm, and the one down here goes through and into the bathroom area to keep that warm, and then this duct brings the warm air into the area of the water system to keep that from freezing. And this was an absolute game changer. It really was fantastic. There's a little switch, it's wired up here to this switch, so you just 3-speed fan, and that turns on the system. So at any point when the engine's running or that additional hydronic heater's running, you'll be able to heat this area and heat the bathroom as well. And that was absolutely worth its weight in gold. Absolutely fantastic piece of kit. On our batteries, we fitted this layer of 12mm Armorflex underneath the battery and raised it off this aluminium deck just by that distance, just to insulate it from the floor, which is really going to be the cold point in the van. I've no idea if that was any benefit or not. I suspect it was, because we never had any problem at all charging the battery. This area was kept really nice and warm, partly from the heater duct but also from that separation. So I think for the sake of a few minutes work and a bit of Armorflex, well worth doing. Keep your batteries insulated, give them the best chance you possibly can at keeping warm. Now, I mentioned that the fuse had melted in my fuse box here, so I'll just show you that. This is the relay box, and can you just see that bottom fuse there? The plastic on it has melted. That's what it's supposed to look like, but that one has melted, but the fuse hasn't blown. So slightly concerning about the quality of these fuses, and I will be replacing all of those in due course. Now, down here at the front of the van, we made this rubber guard which could roll down. You undo these straps and then it rolls down and prevents airflow through the radiator to keep the engine running at its full operating temperature. Now, we used this when the temperature got down to maybe -9 or so, and I did notice that the engine was running a little bit cool, and with this down it was back up to full operating temperature really nicely. But actually I don't think it made very much difference. I didn't see anybody else up there using this sort of thing on their vehicles, so I think the vehicle's thermostat does a great job. If it's not up to temperature, it stops the flow through the radiator anyway, so the engine can be at good temperature. And the other thing, which is another buy cheap buy twice thing, is that this rubber sheet has actually started perishing already. Look at that. You can see cracks in the rubber. So if you're going to do something like this, perhaps use a better quality material. You see the cracks there when you bend it. Now, this thing we put on the side of the van, the little link for YouTube and the logo saying our channel name, that did actually have some benefit. We had quite a few occasions where people contacted us either through Instagram or through YouTube comments saying, oh, we're the ones parked behind you, or we've just seen you boarding a ferry, or whatever it might be. So actually quite nice spreading the word. It's really nice to hear from people when you're out on the road. Now, I know I've gone on about these tyres so much over all these trips, but I cannot stress enough how much of a game changer proper tyres are when you're with any of this sort of travel, particularly snow and ice. These tyres, we did over 1,000 miles on solid ice and compacted snow roads, and these didn't let us down once. They were absolutely fantastic. We didn't need our snow chains once, so they stayed firmly in their box. And you know, although we'd practiced putting them on, so we were we knew exactly what we were doing with them, they stayed here. They haven't been on the vehicle other than on the drive when we were practicing. But of course these are a legal requirement in these countries, so you must carry them with you, and you must understand how to put them on as well before you're in those conditions. You don't want to be learning when it's too late. But actually, again, back to these BF Goodrich KO2 all-terrain tyres. Absolutely fantastic, the best investment we've ever made for this van. Buy cheap, buy twice. There's lots of alternatives out there, but they're not as good as this. Just spend those extra few quid and get yourself some decent tyres. Now I've gone on about these so much, you might think that we're sponsored. We're not, but if there's anybody out there listening from BF Goodrich who wants to bung us a few of these or do us a bit of sponsorship, we're very, very happy to talk. Now, if you remember from our preparations video, we changed out our screen wash to this stuff, which is good for down to minus 28 degrees centigrade. This absolutely blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. You know, in the UK, whatever you do with your screen wash, the stuff that you buy here, you go out on a really cold morning and your screen washers are frozen solid, aren't they? This stuff, every single time I needed to use it, it was just completely clear, absolutely perfect, keeping a clear screen. We were down to minus 23 we had, and we never had any issue whatsoever with cleaning the windscreen, so that is absolutely essential. The other fluids we changed were the engine coolant, to make sure that that would be fine in those low temperatures, and the engine oil. When I'd last had it serviced, I made sure they put in an oil that was suitable for those conditions down to there, and we never had any problem at all from the engine's perspective or the fluids anywhere on the van. Obviously the engine coolant is also what's going through the hydronic heating system, so again that was in tip-top condition, no risk of any freezing with any of that stuff either. Now another thing that I made was these things, which are ski carriers, and these went on the back of the van on the sort of universal cycle carrier thing that I've got on the back door, and this just opens up, and with the two of them like that, we could store our skis on the back of the van. In fact, we only actually used these a couple of times just at ski resorts, when we wanted to just keep the skis off the van overnight so that they dried off after a day skiing, because I didn't really want to put them back in the roof box with snow on them, because it will just melt and get wet and then the edges will rust, and you just don't want that, do you? So although we only used them a couple of times, they were really useful. Not sure whether I'd bother in the future. There's other ways of you know, just leaving your skis so that they dry before you put them away, or you know, physically dry them. So yeah, they were nice to have, but not an essential. Now this great big long aluminium bar was something I made so that when the back doors are open, you can hook it on one door and then hook it on the other one, and that keeps those doors nice and firm so they're not going to blow shut. Obviously, if any of you have built a Sprinter van or done any work in the back of one of these, you know what happens when you're stood here doing some work in the back of your van and the door blows closed onto you, especially when you've got extra weight on the doors, like all this stuff. There's a spare wheel on that door, so there's a lot of weight in them, and a little bit of wind, or if you're not parked perfectly level, these catches which hold the doors open are not the best in the world. So I'll just put that bar up there to help keep the door open when I'm doing anything out here. It actually well worthwhile, really, really, really useful. Just prevents that risk of the doors closing when you don't want them to. There's all sorts of reasons you don't want your back doors to slam. And that's not particularly an Arctic modification, but you know, in those winter conditions you can get extra wind, so the risk of your doors blowing closed is probably a bit higher in those sort of conditions, but it's well worth having something like that for any trip really. Now there were a couple of other additions I made before we went away, which were not Arctic things, but worthwhile additions to the van nonetheless. First one was this mobile phone holder. This is from Quadlock. Again, we're not sponsored, but if you want to talk, we're really happy. So it's got a charging thing in there with the mag mount thing that you have on your phone. So it just drops on there, and as soon as it's on there, it starts charging, and it's super cool. And also, since we got back, I've fitted these additional USB sockets throughout the van, so that we don't have trailing wires all the way across here for things like the CarPlay and stuff. So really neat setup. That is super strong, and that magnet connection is fabulous. Really cool. And another non-Arctic but super useful addition was the kitchen extension. Made great use of that. So yeah, it's a bit of wood on the end of the kitchen. It's very cool. So in conclusion, all these modifications for our Arctic adventure, this hydronic heating system with the heater for this area was absolutely essential for us. To be able to have no worries at all about starting the engine in really cold conditions was fabulous. To be able to have a full tank of piping hot water within a few minutes at any point was fantastic, and to be able to use this heater to heat our batteries and our drying area inside the van was also a really great spin-off. So couldn't recommend that highly enough. I think an additional engine heater is pretty much an essential in seriously cold conditions, and the way we set this up, heating the hot water as well and this garage area, was really just an additional bonus. So can't recommend that highly enough. The batteries, these LiPo 4 batteries, you can't charge them when they're below 0 degrees C because they freeze inside, so that's obviously pretty dangerous. And I've got the battery management system computer in here set so that it will shut off charging below 5 degrees C, just to give an additional safety margin, and we never had any problem at all charging the batteries throughout our whole trip. So another advantage of the heating duct here, keeping these batteries warm, and also probably the Armorflex insulation underneath will have contributed to that a little bit as well. The fluids, I've always mentioned the windscreen washer fluid, the engine coolant, and also the oil, making sure that they're all properly rated for really, really cold conditions. Another absolute essential, dead easy to do, well worth it. But really the single biggest advantage we had on this van on this trip were the tyres. I've gone on about them at length, so I won't bore you any longer, but just bear in mind top quality tyres are an absolute essential. We do have the advantage of this van being rear wheel drive, which is obviously far better for traction, because you need your driven wheels to be on the heaviest end of the vehicle. But even without that, good tyres are absolutely essential. If you've got a front wheel drive van, or if you haven't got really good tyres, you're going to be using those snow chains pretty regularly, I'd suggest, up there. So what's next? As you can see, the back of the van, I've got the bed out at the moment. That's why the mattress is down there, because I'm in the process of doing some modifications. I'm fitting a air conditioning unit, which is just up here on the ceiling, and doing some modifications to the water system, a filtration system, and various other odds and ends which you'll see in the coming weeks. And we might even get a van tour out. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget you can do that little subscribey thing and the bell to check out anything else. And in the meantime, there's loads of videos over on the channel. See our whole Arctic adventure if you haven't already seen that. See how we actually put these modifications to use up there in the frozen wilderness. And we'll see you next time.